Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time you're watching this. My name's Connor from 905 Review. You're checking out our series Give This a Spin, where I recommend you guys some of my favorite albums. Today we're looking at The Newfound Interest in Connecticut and their 2005 release, Tell Me About the Long Dark Path Home. The band is a quintet from Richmond Hill, Ontario, who toured across the province in the early 2000s. They would release 2 EPs and this lone full-length release before the members parted ways. The band has described Tell Me About the Long Dark Path Home as being post-emo, in that musically it's got atmosphere and complexity reminiscent of post-rock or math rock genres to support a vocal style more in line with emo. So this makes for a pretty interesting dynamic, and why don't we check it out? The album opens off with its first track, The Computers Stopped Exchanging Information. This begins with the sound of horns and percussion all going awry, trying to find their footing, before conveniently enough, the sound of footsteps is heard walking outside, which will introduce the main guitar melody. Then the bass and drums come in soon after to give this a more complete sound. And there's this great sense of tension they build towards, as if you're taking a big step into something new, or grand, or unknown. Really great opener that culminates with a climactic ending. Continuing from The Computer Stopped Exchanging Information is And Started Sharing Stories. It opens with some yelling vocals, thunderous frantic drums, lightning bolt-like guitar strums, all picking up as soon as the song begins, right as the previous track expires. And I do really like the opening line, I can't speak without the word spilling. Whether it's being real anxious about trying to not say something in particular during a conversation, trying to not let that slip out, or if it's just being such a mess that you feel like you can't string a coherent, wow, me right now, being such a mess you can't string, wow. It's like I hit like a mental block when I try to bring that thought from my brain to my mouth. Being such a mess that you can't properly string together a coherent sentence. Regardless, my point was that I like the line. Speaking of the lyrics, now that the vocals play a part as opposed to the instrumental album opener, this is where we get the real emo sense coming into play. So continuing out of The Computers Stopped Sharing Information and Started Sharing Stories is And They Kissed. It really slows the pace of things down as we're led by some moody horns. Something about this song just speaks to me. I feel it. It's another instrumental, but it really makes my heart yearn in some weird, beautiful way. Then opening the second side of the first record is, okay, you can be tigers, but no crashing. It starts off with this soft, bittersweet melody, again allowing for all the other instruments to slowly chime in as the song begins to build itself up. While the guitars keep a pretty steady pace throughout this, drummer Masha Rosenberg must have gotten the memo they're doing a jazz track because he goes ridiculously hard the entire time. The song then comes to its peak with some screaming vocals, roughly halfway through. The drum rhythm continues it right into the next 5 years of work, and we built that song as the guitar strums continue while sounding darker. And I imagine Rosenberg must have gotten a pretty good workout playing these two songs back to back. Even as the song slows down, it still sounds like he has plenty of work to do, but I do love the sound and mood of the last minute here. A tender song about relationships. Continuing out of 5 years of work and we built that song is And It Sings for Itself. While the other songs all transitioned rather smoothly, this one was more of an abrupt change, feeling less like a continuation. It slowly takes its time to build itself as one guitar is heard strumming, soon joined by a second to trade chords with it, and thereafter a third. The bass finds its way in, and then once the drums join, it's complete. It just makes for a nice smooth groove. Or maybe I spoke too soon. This might be the most chaotic song thus far. And then lyrically, it's like the lead and screaming backing vocals are singing two different songs simultaneously. Then the last minute here is just some casual conversation among people walking. Opening the second disc then is I Can Hear Your Footsteps Just Outside Camp. Sa, sa, sa. That's not me being goofy, that's part of the title. Also, listening to this album on CD or digitally, those footsteps to end And It Sings for Itself would continue straight into I Can Hear Your Footsteps Just Outside Camp, sa, sa, sa. However, that kind of loses its effect on vinyl with them both being on separate records. The song does begin with another nice calm melody, and this really gets some backbone to it when, again, the almost unnecessarily active drums come in. But you know, that's kind of fitting. Camping's a good time to relax, but you also gotta stay observant for things like bears, right? I really don't mind the drums at all. A, because I love drums, and B, it keeps you on your toes for such a calming song. It doesn't let you get too relaxed or too eased into it. And the horns, just such a beautiful touch once the song changes up. Things slow down, then pick themselves right back up as the song concludes itself. And this is just so incredible. I mean, I love every aspect of this song, and I'd say it's probably my favorite on the album. This also transitions so well into I Can See Your Breath Rising in the Air, as the up-tempo aggression remains for a stellar jam. This finds itself dying down and easing up as the song spends a minute and a half just slowly crawling itself to sleep. Continuing out of I Can See Your Breath Rising in the Air is On My Way Back, Watching Northern Lights Recede. It starts off as another mellow tune, reflecting on observing the northern lights with somebody you no longer have, I suppose. And I'm going to go ahead and say side C of this album is practically perfect, because these three songs, this stretch of three songs that were, not that we just analyzed, but that were in the process of ending. Oh, God. The two songs prior and this one, making up side C, are all stellar, is what I'm trying to get at. And the last half of this song is mostly just ambience, sounds of heavy breathing in the cold air, and then more footsteps. On the vinyl versions of this album, this latter ambient half is actually broken off from the rest of the track and used to start the final side of the final record, essentially acting as an intro to the 10th track, The Arctic Circle, in which the horns will then come in and take over. It's another great song that, as all over the place as it is, every single move just feels so calculated. And I mean, given their niche music style, this certainly isn't your typical breakup song. It really picks up with some agonizing vocals, only to die back down afterwards until some real thunderous drums come back in to revive the song. And I wish they continued this for longer, or really went somewhere with this, but instead they revisit the abundance of horns as heard to begin the album. And the Newfound Interest in Connecticut knows me too well, because after ending on 30 seconds of ambience, they then give us 30 seconds of the band giving it their all for one final secret jam to go out on. But hold up. That's really the end of the album? You're telling me they only contributed 7 minutes to the final album side? That's where they get you, because midway through it, there's actually a locked groove where the needle will stay in until you lift it and remove it yourself, kind of like in my previous review for F sharp A sharp Infinity by Godspeed You Black Emperor, except instead of having the locked groove at the end of the vinyl, they have it midway through, so you have to actually lift it over it to continue for a real secret hidden track. I mean, it's not really a song or nothing, it's just a shout out track where all the contributors of the album introduce themselves and mention the role that they play. Physical copies of Tell Me About the Long Dark Path Home are pretty scarce, as the band's popularity is just that of a cult following. As far as I know, there exist only the original 2005 CDs of this album, and due to a large underground demand, only last year they printed it on vinyl for the first time, a mere 500 copies on black records, and even more rare are the 150 on white records. Not much unlike the album Scenery by Ryo Fukui I previously reviewed. Tell Me About the Long Dark Path Home gained a newfound interest when, thanks to it being the internet age, somebody uploaded the album online that brought it much more attention and praise than it received upon its initial 2005 release. Even still, it's a fairly underground release that I strongly recommend math rock and post-rock enthusiasts give a spin. I was only even made aware of it by my girlfriend, who follows a blog called Sophie's Floorboard, who made a post on the album / the band. I'll link that below. Check that site out for sure, because they post all sorts of great quality underground artists. This eventual growth in popularity led to the album finally being put on Spotify and, as previously mentioned / seen, cut on vinyl for the first time in 2021. So to recap, Tell Me About the Long Dark Path Home is an awesome album that still has yet to receive the attention and praise that it truly deserves, but it seems that they're finally on the path in that direction, and not a dark path. And, well, yeah, I guess it was a long path, but not a dark path. This is some quality music of whatever genre you want to categorize it as, and just an excellent piece of underground art. I am beyond comfortable stamping this thing with an A- grading, though I wouldn't at all be surprised to find myself bumping it up to an A in the future. It's just such an incredibly consistent release. All the songs on it are good, there's no weak tracks, and I really don't have many bones to pick with the album. As I said earlier, I wish the ending were a bit more dramatic, but that's not the end of the world or nothing. Aside from that, the only thing I really have with it is I feel like between the common audio usage of footsteps and ambience and the album's imagery. It was supposed to mentally take me to a place where I'd feel like I was somewhere like the woods, for example, but for whatever reason it just didn't click like that for me. And as such, I guess personally I would have felt better if this album just stuck to a more traditional studio sound. Those have been my thoughts on Tell Me About the Long Dark Path Home. Let me know your thoughts. Appreciate you sticking around. Appreciate seeing you. Always a blessing. Would be an even greater blessing to see you again. And with that, I hope you take it easy. But real quick, before I take off, what were your thoughts on this album? Let me know, as well as any other albums you might want to hear my thoughts on, any other comments you might have had on the video, and as always, you're a beauty.